The council chamber of the Galactic Union shimmered with the faint blue light of 1,000 holograms. Across the curved hall, alien representatives from hundreds of worlds sat in silence, the air heavy with disbelief. On the grand screen before them, the planet Earth burned, not in surrender, but in defiance. Whole continents glowed red. Cities turned into blinding points of light as humanity unleashed weapons the Council had forbidden for centuries. Yet the horror wasn't just in the destruction. It was in the fact that Earth had chosen this. Humanity had decided to fight back, even when the entire galaxy had already written them off as extinct. A low murmur rippled through the council floor. The delegates, scaled, feathered, and luminous beings, shifted in their seats, exchanging uneasy looks. None of them had expected this outcome. Earth was supposed to fall quietly. The Council's peacekeeping fleet had been sent to contain the human rebellion before it spread to other colonies. But what they witnessed now was something beyond calculation. It was not containment, it was retaliation. The Supreme Arbiter's voice cracked through the silence, cold and composed. "Is this transmission verified?" A silver-skinned aide trembled as she replayed the footage. Multiple sources confirm it. Earth initiated the counterattack within 12 minutes of the orbital bombardment. Their communication systems were offline, yet their defense grid activated independently. "Sir, it's as if the planet itself decided to fight back," the words hung in the air. For centuries, the Council had maintained order across the stars. Planets obeyed. Civilizations complied. But humans were never predictable. Even after being reduced to a single war-torn world, they had refused to kneel. And now their defiance had turned into something terrifying. Down on Earth, the skies burned. The alien armadas had rained fire across the surface, expecting quick submission. Instead, the ground erupted with light. Old satellites, thought to be derelict, came alive. Ancient orbital stations reactivated. The global defense network, dormant since humanity's collapse, roared to life. It wasn't just armies fighting. It was every surviving human, every hidden weapon, every ounce of fury that had been buried under decades of loss. In the midst of the chaos, a small group of survivors huddled beneath the ruins of an old communications center. The walls shook with distant explosions, dust falling like ash. Their leader, a weathered man with eyes like cold steel, stared at the flickering screen showing the orbit above. Alien ships burned like falling stars. "They thought they could erase us," he said quietly. "Now they'll learn what happens when you corner humanity." His voice wasn't filled with hatred. It was something deeper, older, a tone born of generations who had suffered, rebuilt, and endured. Around him, the others nodded. None of them believed they could win outright, but that didn't matter. For humans, survival had always been the first victory. Up in orbit, the galactic fleets began to falter. Their shields flickered under weapons no one had seen for centuries, rail guns hidden beneath the oceans, kinetic projectiles launched from the moon, and electromagnetic pulses that ripped through their systems. Every strike was precise, almost as if Earth knew their every move before they made it. In the council chamber, panic grew. "They cannot possess this level of coordination," hissed an insectoid delegate. "Their infrastructure was destroyed decades ago." But deep in the shadows of the chamber, an old historian spoke softly. "You forget what humans are. They were never the strongest or the fastest. But when they fight, they learn, they adapt, they remember." The Council had underestimated them before. During the early years of expansion, humans had been considered reckless, impulsive, too emotional to survive the politics of the stars. Yet time after time, they had thrived in impossible conditions. When others avoided barren worlds, humans turned them into homes. When other species gave up on dying colonies, humans stayed and rebuilt. Now, that same resilience had turned into a weapon. Across the galaxy, communication relays buzzed with reports. Human colonies once believed lost were transmitting again. Hidden fleets emerged from asteroid belts and nebulae, long-forgotten ships now flying under the old Earth flag. The message was clear. Earth had not been conquered. It had been waiting. The Supreme Arbiter slammed a clawed hand on the console. "If they continue this, the balance of the galaxy will collapse. Then perhaps the historian replied quietly. The galaxy deserves to remember who broke the balance first. Down on Earth, the survivors pushed through the smoke and ruin, following the pulse of old signals buried deep underground. They reached a vast chamber hidden beneath the city, a command hub built centuries ago during the first interstellar wars. Screens flickered on, revealing archives of human history, wars, victories, and losses. Every memory of pain and perseverance had been stored, ready for this moment. This wasn't just a counterattack, one of them whispered. It's a message, the man nodded slowly. They wanted to remind the galaxy what fear feels like. Outside, the orbital bombardments had stopped. Alien fleets retreated, not from damage, but from confusion. They couldn't understand how a single world, half in ruins, had turned their invasion into chaos. Sensors detected strange energy signatures, something ancient, something beyond the known limits of technology. Earth wasn't just fighting with weapons. It was fighting with everything it had ever been. As the smoke cleared, a strange calm settled over the planet. Fires still burned, but in the distance, blue lights rose from the horizon, human signals, beacons calling to others across the stars. The message echoed across every frequency. We are still here. In the council chamber, silence reigned once again. The delegates watched the final image transmitted from Earth, a human standing atop the ruins, holding a scorched flag against the wind. The Supreme Arbiter turned away, his voice trembling with something close to fear. They'll never stop, will they? No, the historian said softly. They don't know how. Somewhere beyond the edge of the galaxy, human ships were already moving. Outposts thought abandoned had reawakened. The colonies, once silent, began transmitting coded messages. The humans were organizing, not to defend, but to strike back. The Council's fleets regrouped, preparing for another wave. But this time there was doubt. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy realized that the humans they had tried to erase were not victims. They were survivors, warriors and creators of chaos when pushed too far. And as the stars glimmered in the void, a single transmission spread across the networks, hijacking every channel. The voice was human, calm, and steady. To those who watched us burn, it said, remember this, Earth does not beg. Earth remembers. And now the galaxy will too. The message cut to static, leaving every listener frozen. The silence that followed was heavier than war drums. In that moment, the galaxy understood one terrible truth. The humans were not gone. They had only been waiting for the right moment to remind everyone why their kind had once been feared. And as the Council scrambled to respond, deep beneath the scorched clouds of Earth, something ancient began to stir, an awakening that would shake every world that had ever doubted humanity's place among the stars. The galaxy thought it had seen Earth's fury, but it had only witnessed the beginning. Beneath the scorched skies of Earth, the air was thick with the scent of ash and ozone. What had once been bright cities were now silent shadows, their towers cracked and bent like old bones. Yet within those ruins, life pulsed quietly. Hidden bunkers came alive with flickering lights and whispers of movement. The people who had survived the first wave of destruction were not soldiers by choice, but survival had shaped them into something harder than steel. Every shattered building, every scarred street told a story of resistance. Humanity had learned to fight even when hope itself seemed like a fading dream. In one of the underground complexes, deep beneath what used to be the Eurasian Command Zone, a group of engineers and tacticians crowded around a glowing table covered in holographic maps. Their leader, the same weathered man who had spoken during the counterattack, now looked older, his face drawn tight from exhaustion. He studied the data streams flowing across the map, signals from awakened satellites, orbital debris patterns, intercepted alien communications. Earth's network was rebuilding itself faster than anyone thought possible. It was as if the planet had been waiting for this moment to reawaken. What we're seeing isn't just resistance, said a woman with soot streaked across her cheeks, her voice steady but strained. These systems are running beyond human input. Someone or something is coordinating them. The man nodded slowly. I know. That's what scares me. They all remembered the early days of the galactic occupation, when the Council had labeled humanity as too dangerous, too unstable to be left unchecked. Their colonies had been dismantled, their technology restricted, their expansion halted under the guise of universal peace. Earth was to remain isolated, a relic of a violent species that couldn't adapt to the Council's order. But humans had always found ways to adapt outside the rules. The first resistance wasn't made of soldiers. It was made of farmers hiding communication relays beneath their fields, scientists working in secret to keep old defense systems alive, and children who grew up hearing stories about the stars they would never see. Over generations, these stories turned into quiet oaths to survive, to endure, to never forget. Now, as the old defense networks came back online, those oaths were being fulfilled in ways no one had imagined. Far above, the orbital debris field had turned into a trap. Fragments of old satellites and abandoned stations moved with uncanny precision, forming patterns that interfered with alien sensors. The fleet commanders of the Galactic Council couldn't understand how this was possible. To them, it looked like chaos, but to Earth's survivors, it was familiar, a symphony of improvisation and desperation. Back in the Council chamber, tension thickened with every new report. The delegates argued over strategy, each one afraid of what might come next. The Supreme Arbiter tried to maintain control, but even his authority was beginning to fracture. Every projection showed the same unsettling outcome. If humanity continued its counterattack at this rate, the galactic balance would collapse within weeks. Trade routes, defense networks, and even the Council's own strongholds could become vulnerable. "This is impossible," hissed a delegate whose translucent skin glowed faintly with nervous color. They were contained. "We monitored their energy levels for decades." "Containment was never enough," the historian replied from his seat at the edge of the chamber. "You mistook silence for surrender." "Humans don't stop, they wait." The word silenced the hall. It was something every member of the Council knew deep down, but had chosen to ignore. Humanity's nature was unpredictable, emotional, and fiercely protective. When cornered, they didn't just fight, they adapted. And now, that adaptation had become a weapon. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of the solar system, strange signals began to appear. Old human outposts, believed long abandoned, were transmitting again. One of them, located on the edge of the Kuiper Belt, sent a coded message that rippled across human frequencies. The survivors on Earth intercepted it and stared in disbelief. It was a message written in an ancient Earth language, simple and haunting. "We never left." The transmission included coordinates, out beyond Neptune, where human ships from the early colonization era had vanished. The man and his small team studied the data carefully. "If these coordinates are real," he said, "then someone out there survived. Maybe they've been waiting for us." The woman beside him frowned. "Or maybe it's a trap." He didn't answer. Humanity had lived under the Council's shadow for so long that even hope felt suspicious. But deep down, he knew they couldn't ignore the call. The signal meant something larger was at play. Across the stars, in the Council's restricted archives, information about Earth's past wars was being unearthed again. The younger delegates had never studied humanity's military history in detail. To them, Earth was just a primitive world that had been tamed long ago. But as they read the old records, wars fought against impossible odds. Rebellions that reshaped entire systems. They began to understand why the older members feared the humans so deeply. One file in particular drew their attention. It described a project known only as Aegis. It was rumored to be Earth's final defense system, a planetary intelligence designed to awaken only in the face of extinction. No one had ever confirmed its existence, but if the recent counterattack was connected to it, then Earth wasn't just fighting back. It was fighting with something far greater than the Council had ever faced. The Supreme Arbiter ordered immediate investigation, but it was already too late. Every attempt to penetrate Earth's defense network was met with silence. Their probes disappeared. Their communications were hijacked and redirected into static. The more they tried to understand, the less sense it made. It was as if Earth itself had become a living fortress. Down below, the survivors continued their work. They moved deeper underground, linking old systems and decoding fragments of ancient data. They found partial blueprints, logs from scientists long dead, and notes that spoke of something buried deep beneath the planet's crust, a network that spanned continents, powered by technology no one fully understood. At night, when the bombardments paused and the smoke cleared just enough to see the stars, they would look up and wonder how many of their own were still out there. Somewhere among those stars, humanity's scattered colonies might still exist, waiting for a signal like this. If they answered, the galaxy would tremble. The man stood alone outside the bunker entrance, watching the horizon glow faintly red. The silence of the ruined world pressed against him. He thought of the old stories, how humanity had once reached for the stars not out of conquest but curiosity. And now, the same species that had dreamed of peace had been forced to remember the art of war. He turned back toward the underground base, his voice steady as he spoke to his team through the comms. If that signal's real, we need to find out what it's calling to. Whatever's out there, it's part of us. From orbit, the alien fleets watched Earth cautiously. They could see the patterns forming across the surface, lights reactivating in what appeared to be deliberate sequences, almost like a code. But no one could decipher it. The Council's analysts began to suspect that humanity wasn't merely defending, they were preparing for something bigger. In the darkness of space, beyond the reach of the Council's sensors, ships began to move. Their hulls bore the marks of ancient design, human craftsmanship from a forgotten era. They had waited in silence for generations, drifting unseen. Now, they turned toward the light of their homeworld, engines igniting one by one. Back on Earth, the survivors felt the first tremors deep underground. The old systems were waking faster now, drawing power from the planet's core. Monitors flickered with strange symbols. The network was speaking again, and it was using their own systems to do it. The woman glanced at the readings, her eyes wide. It's sending something out, beyond our system. The man didn't speak. He knew what it meant. Earth wasn't asking for help anymore. It was issuing a call to arms, and somewhere across the stars, in places the Council had long forgotten, that call was being heard. The galaxy had thought humanity's fury ended with fire, but they were only beginning to understand the truth. Earth's real weapon had never been its machines. It had always been its people, and those people were no longer hiding. The countdown had begun, and the galaxy had no idea what was coming next. The stars around Earth were no longer silent. Across the void, hidden fleets stirred like long, dormant beasts, their old engines lighting up for the first time in centuries. On every frequency, the same coded pulse echoed again and again, Earth's call. Some answered with caution, others with disbelief, but none could ignore it. The humans who had once scattered among the stars, forced into exile by the Galactic Council, were waking from the shadows. The old unity that the Council had feared most was beginning to take shape again. In the Council's grand chamber, the Supreme Arbiter sat alone in the dim blue light, staring at the holofeeds pouring in from the front lines. The destruction was spreading. Earth's counterattack had not ended. It was expanding. Defense fleets sent to contain the situation were either retreating or vanishing altogether. Supply convoys were being intercepted by human ships operating under no known banner. Some carried markings of colonies that had supposedly been wiped out generations ago. Others bore no symbols at all, ghost ships fighting for a home that most of the galaxy believed was dead. The Arbiter's advisors pleaded for restraint. "We cannot risk escalation," one said, her crystalline form flickering with agitation. "The humans are unpredictable. Every attack we launch seems to make them stronger." But the Arbiter's voice was low and sharp. "If we do nothing, their defiance will spread. Already, smaller systems whisper of rebellion. If humanity becomes a symbol of resistance, this council will fracture." He didn't say the rest aloud, but everyone in the chamber knew it. The Galactic Union had built its peace on fear. Fear of chaos. Fear of war, and most of all, fear of humanity. Meanwhile, on Earth, preparations continued in the underground networks. The survivors had moved deeper into the old command vaults where the planet's final defense systems had been built. The massive chambers stretched for miles beneath the crust, filled with dormant machinery, humming faintly as if remembering old orders. The man who led them stood before one of the central consoles, his weathered hands brushing across symbols no one had touched in centuries. "What if this thing wakes up and decides we're the threat?" asked the woman beside him, her voice tense. "We don't even know what it's capable of." He looked at her and gave a weary half-smile. "If it was built by humans, it was built to protect us. That's all we have to trust right now." But deep down, even he wasn't sure. The old systems were rewriting themselves, growing more complex every hour. It felt less like code and more like thought, alive, aware. The ancient Aegis network was becoming something more than anyone had planned. Above them, on the remains of an orbital platform, a small group of engineers worked to rebuild long-range transmitters. They were trying to reach the source of the mysterious signal from beyond Neptune. One of them, a quiet woman who had once been a communications officer, watched the flickering radar feed. The readings made no sense. The supposed outpost was moving. Slowly but steadily, the object was heading toward the inner system. "It's not a station," she whispered. "It's a ship." Her companion frowned. "That's impossible. The size, there's nothing that large left in human space." But there it was, a colossal vessel drifting toward Earth, its shape lost in shadow. It broadcasted no identification code, no origin, only the ancient message that had reignited humanity's hope. "We never left." When the data reached the underground command, silence filled the room. No one knew whether to feel relief or fear. The man stared at the holographic projection of the massive ship. "If this is human," he said, "then we're not alone. But if it's something else pretending to be human, we may have just invited a new enemy." While Earth prepared for the unknown arrival, the Galactic Council launched a secret investigation. A special envoy named Kale, a hybrid born of both human and alien lineage, was sent to infiltrate the planet. The Council believed his mixed heritage might allow him to understand what pure aliens could not. Kyle had lived his whole life between worlds, never fully accepted by either. To the humans, he was a traitor from the stars. To the Council, a tool. But deep down, he wanted answers of his own. His descent through the blackened skies of Earth was rough. The atmosphere shimmered with residual radiation, and the ground below glowed faintly in the night. As his craft touched down near the ruins of the old capital, he stepped out and felt the strange pull of gravity and memory. The land was scarred but alive. He could sense it, the stubborn pulse of life refusing to fade. He found the humans easily enough. They had been tracking his entry since he entered orbit. Armed scouts surrounded him, wary but curious. When they realized he was part human, their suspicion turned to confusion. The woman from the command center arrived, her rifle lowered but ready. "You don't look like one of them," she said. "I'm not," Kyle replied quietly. "But I'm not exactly one of you either." They brought him underground, where he finally met the man leading the resistance. Kale told them about the Council's panic, about how the galaxy was preparing for all-out war. He didn't hide that he'd been sent to spy. Strangely, the man didn't seem angry. "You're here now," the leader said. "So look around. Tell your council what you see. We're not trying to destroy the galaxy. We're trying to remind it what freedom feels like." Kyle spent days in the tunnels, observing the humans. They worked tirelessly, repairing systems, rescuing survivors, decoding transmissions. There was no single government, no grand strategy, yet somehow everything moved in harmony. He couldn't understand it. On every other world he had seen, chaos meant collapse. But here, chaos was strength. It was the heart of their defiance. At night, Kale spoke with the woman by the old transmitter, watching the stars through cracks in the ruined ceiling. "Do you really think you can win?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "Winning isn't the point. We just don't want to live on our knees." Her words stayed with him long after she left. In that moment, he began to realize why the Council feared humanity so much. They didn't fight because they wanted power. They fought because they refused to be forgotten. But even as Kale's understanding grew, danger crept closer. The massive ship from beyond Neptune was almost at Earth's orbit now. Its hull was covered in strange markings, part human, part unknown. It broadcasted no signals other than the same ancient phrase. Council fleets moved to intercept, but before they could, the ship unleashed a burst of energy that disabled every sensor within range. The entire solar system went dark for 7 seconds. When the systems came back online, the ship was gone. On Earth, alarms rang through the bunkers. The Aegis network reacted instantly, activating defenses without human command. The man and his team watched as the system began tracing something deep within the planet's mantle, an energy pattern that matched the ship's frequency. It wasn't an attack. It was a response. Kale stood with them as the ground trembled softly. "Whatever that thing is," he said, "it's connected to your planet. Maybe even built by it." The leader's jaw tightened. "Then it's coming home." Above them, the council fleets reorganized. Panic spread among their ranks. Some ships refused orders, others broke formation entirely. Rumors whispered that Earth's awakening had triggered something ancient in the fabric of the galaxy itself, something the council had buried long ago. In the hidden corners of space, forgotten colonies lit up one after another, sending the same pulse back toward Earth. Across the void, humanity's scattered children were answering the call. Kyle's final report to the council never came. He watched as humans rebuilt hope out of ashes, and for the first time, he saw a side of his heritage he could be proud of. But he also knew what was coming. The council would not stop. They couldn't. To admit defeat would unravel everything they had built. The stage was set. The fleets were gathering. The mysterious ship was still missing, but its echo pulsed through the stars like a heartbeat. And deep beneath the surface of Earth, the Aegis network whispered in a language older than war itself, waiting for the moment to reveal what humanity had left sleeping in its core. The galaxy held its breath, unaware that the real storm had yet to begin. The sky above Earth had turned a deep, unnatural shade of gray. Lightning flickered soundlessly through the clouds, spreading across the horizon like cracks in glass. The survivors in the underground bunkers could feel it. The air was different, alive with a quiet hum that seemed to come from beneath their feet. Every console, every sensor, every piece of machinery buzzed faintly, as if listening to something distant and powerful. The Aegis network was fully awake now, and whatever it had been waiting for was close. In the control room, the leader stood before the main display, the light from the screens flickering across his tired face. Around him, his team worked in tense silence, decoding signals, tracking movements, scanning the dark void above. The mysterious ship that had disappeared beyond Neptune had reappeared suddenly at the edge of Earth's orbit. It was massive, dwarfing anything human or alien had ever built. Its surface shifted and shimmered like liquid metal, forming patterns that resembled ancient human symbols, words from a language long forgotten. "We're detecting energy readings off the scale," one of the engineers said, her voice trembling. "It's not attacking, but it's changing the planet's magnetic field." The leader stared at the readings, his chest tightening. "It's communicating," he said quietly, "but not with us." Up in the darkness of space, the Galactic Council's fleets gathered like a storm. Hundreds of warships, each gleaming with alien precision, surrounded Earth in a formation meant to intimidate and overwhelm. The Supreme Arbiter watched the live feed from the command deck of his flagship, his expression unreadable. "They brought this upon themselves," he said to his generals. "Humanity has chosen extinction," but even he couldn't ignore the unease spreading among his own officers. Reports from across the galaxy told of human uprisings, of colonies that had gone silent for centuries suddenly reborn with activity. Trade routes were collapsing. Entire worlds were refusing council control. And through it all, that same signal pulsed through every channel, steady, defiant, unyielding. Earth's heartbeat. Back in the bunker, Kale stood beside the woman at the transmitter station, watching the giant ship on the screen. Its surface was shifting again, forming a new pattern. He didn't understand it, but the woman gasped softly. It's a map," she whispered. "That's the Milky Way. It's pointing to the center of the galaxy." The leader turned sharply. "The center? Why there?" Before anyone could answer, the ground shook violently. Alarms blared. One of the younger technicians shouted, "Multiple warp signatures! Council fleets entering orbit!" The leader's voice rose above the chaos. "Get everyone to their stations. Power up the surface defense grid. No one fires until I give the order." Outside, the sky blazed as alien warships descended through the clouds, their massive engines cutting streaks of light through the storm. The people who had survived years of loss now found themselves standing once more at the edge of annihilation. Yet this time there was no panic in their eyes, only determination. They had already lived through the worst. Fear no longer held them. Kyle watched as the leader moved between stations, giving calm, precise orders. He could see the exhaustion in the man's movements, the weight of command pressing down on him, but also something else: belief. The kind of belief Kale had never seen in the council. "You really think you can stand against them?" he asked quietly. The leader didn't look at him. "We already are." Above, the first council fleet opened fire. Beams of energy tore through the atmosphere, lighting up the clouds. But instead of burning through the surface, they scattered harmlessly, bending and dissolving into a shimmering barrier that surrounded the planet. The Aegis network had deployed its shield, an invisible field woven through the Earth's magnetic layers. In orbit, the council commanders were stunned. "That's impossible," one of them hissed. "No known technology could counter that kind of energy." "It's not technology," another replied in disbelief. "It's the planet itself." For a brief moment, silence returned to the void. Then, from within Earth's core, a low vibration spread outward, a deep, resonant sound that shook even the ships in orbit. The mysterious vessel above the planet responded, emitting a slow pulse of light that rippled through space. The two signals merged, syncing perfectly. On Earth, the power systems flickered. The leader turned to his team. "Aegis is synchronizing with the ship," he said. "Whatever this is, it's bigger than us." The woman looked at him, fear in her voice. "What if it's not on our side?" He didn't answer, because even he wasn't sure anymore. Far away in the council chamber, the historian who had once warned of humanity's resilience watched the unfolding chaos in silence. Around him, the delegates argued, some demanding total destruction of Earth, others begging for restraint. But he knew it was too late. The galaxy was already unraveling. "You don't understand," he murmured to no one in particular. "You can't fight something that's already part of you." Because somewhere deep in the history of the galaxy, long before the Council's rule, humans had not just been explorers, they had been builders. Rumors spoke of a network of ancient human technology spread across the stars, long lost when the first wars consumed them. What if the Aegis wasn't just Earth's defense system? What if it was the last remnant of something older, something waiting to reawaken? The Arbiter's fleet prepared for a second strike. Massive weapons charged, their glow casting long shadows over the planet below. But before they could fire, the stars around Earth flickered and went dark. Not from power loss, but because something enormous was blocking the light. Dozens of ships had appeared out of nowhere. Human ships. Their hulls bore the markings of lost colonies, names once whispered as myths. Mars Command, Titan Refuge, Europa Defense. Even outer system fleets thought destroyed in the first invasions. They had returned, answering Earth's call. The comm channels erupted with overlapping voices. "This is the free systems of Mars, standing by. Titan defense ready for deployment. This is the Europa fleet, Earth. You're not alone anymore." Every screen in the bunker came alive with transmissions. The woman covered her mouth, tears in her eyes. For the first time in generations, humanity had become one voice again. But the leader didn't celebrate. He knew this wasn't victory. It was the calm before the final storm. He looked to the sky, his voice steady. "Tell every ship to hold formation. We're not firing first." In orbit, tension built like static before a lightning strike. The Council fleets and the human armadas faced each other across the darkness, weapons charged, engines burning. Between them, the great mysterious vessel drifted silently, its surface glowing brighter with each passing moment. Kale watched the sensors, feeling the air grow colder. "Something's happening," he said. "That ship. It's building energy faster than anything we've ever recorded." The leader stepped closer to the display. "Is it going to attack?" "I don't know," Kyle replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "But if it does, I don't think either side will survive." A pulse of light erupted from the ship, washing over both fleets. Every weapon, every sensor, every system shut down instantly. Silence filled the void. Then, through every communicator, a voice echoed, calm, human, and ancient. "Children of Earth, children of the stars." "The time for silence is over." The signal cut abruptly, leaving every listener frozen. The leader felt a chill run through him. It wasn't just a recording. It was someone, or something, alive. The Aegis network began transmitting back, matching the voice's tone. The planet trembled again. Across the galaxy, dormant stations awakened, their lights flaring to life in distant systems. The Council ships scrambled to re-establish control, but it was no use. The energy field from Earth was expanding, spreading outward like a living wave. Kale gripped the console. "It's rewriting their systems." "Every ship out there, Council or human, it's connected now." The woman looked at him in terror. "Connected to what?" He didn't answer. None of them could. The truth was too large to grasp. Above Earth, the fleets held their positions, caught between fear and awe. The great ship began to open, its core glowing brighter than the sun. From the depths of its light came the faint outline of something massive and mechanical, something built by human hands long before history remembered. On the Council flagship, the Arbiter rose slowly, his face pale as the light filled the room. "What have they done?" he whispered, and on the surface, as the ground quaked and the horizon burned with light, the leader of Earth's resistance stood tall, eyes fixed on the heavens. "We didn't start this war," he said softly, "but we'll finish it." The sky cracked open, and the world held its breath as the true power of Earth began to reveal itself. The light that burst from the ship above Earth stretched across the stars, wrapping the planet in a soft white glow that looked almost peaceful from orbit. But inside that light, the air trembled. Machinery deep underground groaned like something ancient stirring in its sleep. The Aegis network pulsed in sync with the ship's energy, and for the first time, the two signals merged into one frequency. The leader watched as the readings on every monitor went wild. "It's pulling power directly from the planet's core," said one of the engineers. "At this rate, it could tear the magnetic field apart." The leader's voice was steady, but his eyes were tight with worry. "Can we shut it down?" "We can't even access it anymore," the woman replied. "It's locking us out. Every command we try gets rejected." A silence fell over the control room. The faint hum of the power systems had turned into a low, rhythmic pulse that felt almost like a heartbeat. Outside, the storms grew stronger, lightning streaking across the sky in patterns that looked deliberate. It was as if Earth itself was alive, and something buried deep within it was waking up. In orbit, both the human and Council fleets hovered in a fragile truce. Every ship had gone dark, their systems still locked from the mysterious pulse. Crews stood in stunned silence, staring at the enormous ship as it unfolded layer by layer, revealing a structure that stretched for kilometers, a colossal ring surrounding a glowing core. Kyle stood at the observation deck of the human command ship, his reflection dim in the glass. He had seen war before, seen what the Council could do when pushed to desperation. But this was different. This was beyond politics, beyond control. Whatever had been sleeping inside Earth and that ancient vessel wasn't human or alien anymore. It was something new, something born from both. The woman's voice came through the comms, tight with panic. "Kyle, the Aegis network's energy field is expanding beyond Earth's atmosphere. If it keeps growing, it'll reach the fleets." He turned toward the stars, his jaw tightening. "Then we're all in the same storm now." Down below, in the depths of the bunker, the leader's team worked frantically to regain control. Data screens flickered with unreadable symbols, ancient scripts that no one had seen in generations. The engineer wiped sweat from her brow and said, "This code, it's not from our era. Some of it predates the first colonization records." The woman who had been manning the transmitter leaned closer to the display. "It's trying to say something." She began translating the fragments, her voice shaking. "System alignment complete. Awaiting command source. Human access denied." The leader frowned. Denied to us? Then who has access? Before anyone could answer, the bunker lights dimmed. A deep rumble rolled through the walls, and the air filled with a faint metallic hum. The holographic map above the table shifted suddenly, showing a glowing point deep beneath the planet's surface. "That's not a weapon sight," said the engineer. It's something else." The point pulsed once, then split into dozens of smaller lights spreading across the globe. The Aegis network wasn't focusing its energy upward. It was spreading it across Earth itself. Kale's voice broke through the static over comms. "We're detecting massive tectonic activity. Whatever's happening, it's planet-wide." On the Council flagship, the Supreme Arbiter watched the same readings with growing dread. "If the humans lose control of this thing," he said, "the explosion will consume half the system." His advisor turned to him, pale and trembling. "Then we must destroy it before it completes whatever it's doing." But before any command could be given, the communication systems crackled to life again. The same voice that had spoken before now filled every channel in the galaxy, calm and steady, yet filled with an authority that made even the most hardened officers freeze. "We were not made to destroy. We were made to preserve. But preservation demands balance. The imbalance has begun. Every ship, every station, every world with a receiver heard it. The message wasn't just sound. It was carried through the very data systems of the galaxy, rewriting transmissions in real time. Across distant colonies, lights flickered, machinery stalled, and ancient human outposts, long abandoned, came alive again. The woman on the ground stared at the display in disbelief. "It's activating something across the stars." The leader looked at the map of the galaxy filling the room. "It's not just defending Earth, it's connecting to every human-built system that ever existed." The realization hit them all at once. The Aegis wasn't just a planetary defense. It was part of a larger network, one that had once spanned the galaxy in humanity's golden age before the Council's rise. Every colony, every old station, every forgotten ship had been built with fragments of that code. The network had been dormant for centuries, waiting for one signal to bring it back. That signal had just been sent. In the council chamber far away, panic broke out. "If those systems come online," one delegate shouted, "the humans will regain control of their entire infrastructure." The Arbiter slammed a clawed hand on the table. "Then we end it now." "Deploy the Annihilation Array!" gasps echoed through the chamber. The Annihilation Array was forbidden, a relic of the old wars, a weapon powerful enough to erase a planet from existence. To use it would break every treaty the Council had ever enforced. But the Arbiter's eyes were cold. "If we don't, everything we built will fall." In orbit, the Council's ships began to shift into new formations. The human fleets noticed immediately. Kale's voice rang out through the comms. "They're preparing their heavy weapons. If they fire, the blast will wipe out half of both fleets." The leader's reply came steady and low. "Then we have one chance to stop them." He turned to his team. "Can we reach Aegis's core directly?" The engineer hesitated. "It's deep, thousands of kilometers down. Even if we find it, we don't know if it'll let us in." "Then we'll make it let us in," he said. The bunker shook violently as another wave of energy rolled through the planet. The massive ship above Earth flared with light, its core spinning faster, like a star being born. The ground split open in places, revealing faint blue lines of energy coursing through the bedrock. Kale landed near the bunker entrance minutes later, his ship smoking from re-entry. When he stepped inside, he didn't need to say anything. They all understood. Whatever was happening, they had to go down, to the heart of it. Together, they boarded an old transport and descended through the fissures in the crust. The deeper they went, the more unnatural the light became, soft blue glows pulsing from the stone like veins of a living thing. The temperature dropped. The air shimmered with static. When they finally reached the chamber, the sight left them speechless. A colossal structure lay buried within the earth, a sphere of metal and glass, larger than any city, pulsing with energy. The Aegis core. Around it, ancient machinery hummed softly, some of it clearly human, some far beyond anything they'd ever seen. The woman stepped forward, her voice barely a whisper. This isn't just human technology." Kale's eyes narrowed. You're right. I've seen fragments like this before in council archives. They said it came from a lost civilization predating them all. The leader stared at the glowing sphere, the light reflected in his eyes. Then this isn't our weapon, he said. We've just awakened something that was never meant to be controlled. Before they could react, the core flared, flooding the chamber with light. A holographic figure appeared before them, a woman's form, calm and ethereal, her voice echoing through the air. Humanity was chosen to protect the balance. But you forgot. You built empires. You made wars. The council tried to erase you, not out of fear of your violence, but because they knew what you could awaken. The leader stepped forward. What are you? I am the memory of the first architects, she replied. And the galaxy you know is built upon their ruins. Now, the cycle begins again. The ground shook violently, energy surging upward through the crust. In orbit, both fleets went into chaos as power surged through their ships, forcing their systems to reconnect to the Aegis frequency. No one could fire. No one could run. Kale looked up toward the surface, his heart pounding. If this thing takes full control, it won't just defend Earth. It could reshape the entire galaxy. The leader's voice was low but determined. Then we have to decide what side of that future we're on. The Aegis core's glow intensified, the entire planet pulsing in time with its heartbeat. Above, the ship's ring structure began to spin, generating a light so bright it outshone the sun. Every world with a trace of human presence felt it, the awakening of something vast, ancient, and unstoppable. And as the galaxy trembled under the weight of that power, one truth became clear. The real war wasn't between humans and the Council anymore. It was between everything that had been built and the force that had come to reclaim it. The core's blinding light faded just enough for the team to see each other again. The air around them vibrated with raw power, like the hum of a living star. Kale shielded his eyes and stared at the holographic figure still floating before them. Her calm expression didn't match the chaos shaking the planet. You said the cycle begins again, he said, voice trembling between awe and anger. What does that mean? What are you doing to us? Her gaze turned toward him, soft but unwavering. Restoration, she said simply. The architects built this world to preserve life. But both humanity and the Council strayed from that purpose. The Aegis will bring balance by resetting what has been broken. The leader stepped forward, shouting over the growing rumble. You're talking about wiping everything clean. That's not balance, it's destruction. The hologram tilted her head as if trying to understand his resistance. You misunderstand. The Aegis does not destroy. It restores what once was, before the corruption, before the wars. The ground cracked beneath their feet, and a burst of energy surged through the core, sending tremors across the entire planet. Kale stumbled, grabbing the woman's arm to steady her. If that thing resets the system, she said, eyes wide, everything, every city, every orbiting station could be erased and rewritten. Above the surface, the fleets hung motionless, trapped by the Aegis field. Then, slowly, human ships began to move, not under the control of their crews, but guided by the same energy that pulsed from Earth's heart. Council ships followed, their systems hijacked as well. Across the stars, hundreds of dormant stations awoke, aligning themselves in a vast geometric pattern that spanned light years. Inside the control bunker, the few remaining operators watched helplessly as data streamed faster than they could process. It's rewriting the entire galactic map, one of them whispered. Every system's being synchronized. The leader's voice came through the comms, sharp with urgency. If we don't stop it now, the reset will reach the core of the galaxy. Everything we know will vanish. Back inside the chamber, Kale stared at the swirling mass of light within the Aegis sphere. There has to be a way to disconnect it, he said. It's still drawing power from the planet. The engineer scanned the readings on her wrist console. There's one point, deep in the energy lattice, a feedback node. If we overload it, we might force the system to reboot instead of reset. The leader looked at the hologram. You said we were chosen to protect life. Then give us that chance. Let us fix what we broke, without erasing it all. For the first time, the hologram hesitated. Her light flickered. Your kind has failed many times before. Why should this cycle be different? Kale took a step closer, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Because this time we remember. We remember what we lost. We've made mistakes, terrible ones, but that means we can learn. You said humans were meant to preserve life. Then let us prove it. For a long, unbearable moment, the only sound was the steady pulse of the core. Then the hologram blinked once, slowly, almost like a sigh. Prove it. The energy reading spiked. A part of the sphere's outer shell opened, revealing a narrow walkway leading to its center. The leader looked at his team. If this works, the entire planet's energy will surge through us. There's no way to survive that. Kyle met his eyes. Maybe not. But if it means saving what's left of humanity, it's worth it. They moved forward together, step by step, into the glowing tunnel. Every movement sent ripples of light cascading across the chamber walls. Above them, storms swirled faster, lightning arcing upward toward space as if connecting the planet to the stars. The fleets outside were now fully synchronized, engines humming in the same rhythm as the Aegis pulse. The galaxy itself seemed to be holding its breath. When they reached the center, the core pulsed once, waiting. The engineer set her device against the node and began the overload sequence. This will build up in seconds, she said. Once it peaks, there's no turning back. Kyle turned to the leader. You've been fighting to protect Earth since this began. Whatever happens next. Thank you. The leader gave a small nod. Just make it count. The console lights turned red. The countdown began. Energy rippled outward, and the core screamed, an otherworldly sound that filled the air with vibration. The hologram's voice echoed faintly. Cycle divergence detected. Balance. Unstable. The entire chamber exploded with light. In orbit, both fleets jolted as the Aegis signal fractured into waves of static. Every ship flickered in and out of power, caught between two conflicting commands. The ancient systems reset and the humans' manual override. The clash of signals tore through the network like a storm of data, rewriting and erasing at once. The planet shook violently. Mountains cracked. Oceans churned. But amid the chaos, something extraordinary happened. Human control systems began reactivating independently. Ships that had been frozen began moving on their own again, guided not by the Aegis, but by their crews. The engineer's voice came through the comms, barely audible through the static. It's working. The override's holding. Just a few more seconds. Then a blinding flash consumed everything. When the light faded, silence followed. The storms above Earth dissipated. The great ship that had hovered for days began to break apart, its massive ring structure collapsing in slow, graceful spirals toward the planet's surface. The sky glowed with the remnants of the energy field, slowly dimming until only the stars remained. Kale opened his eyes, gasping for breath. He was lying on the cold floor of the chamber, the others beside him. The core was still there, but its light had softened, now a quiet blue instead of white. The holographic figure reappeared, her form weaker than before. You have diverged the cycle, she said softly. The reset has been stopped, but the network remains fractured. The choice is now yours, to rebuild or to repeat. The leader, barely able to stand, looked up at her. We'll rebuild, but this time not as conquerors or survivors. As guardians. The hologram smiled faintly, her image flickering. Then perhaps at last balance may endure. With that, she faded, and the Aegis core went dark. In orbit, the Council's flagship transmitted a final signal. The Arbiter's voice came through, low and cautious. Human Commander, what have you done? Kale replied, his tone weary but steady. We ended the reset. Earth stands, so does your Council. Maybe that's the balance she meant. There was a long pause. Then, surprisingly, the Arbiter spoke again, almost reluctantly. Perhaps the galaxy has more to learn from you than we thought. The transmission ended. For the first time in generations, the human and Council fleets stood down. No weapons fired. No ships fled. They simply hovered above a quiet blue planet that had once again defied extinction. On the ground, the team emerged from the bunker to see the sun breaking through a sky washed clean by the storm. Cities below flickered with life again, power returning in waves. People stepped outside, dazed but alive, staring upward at the strange beauty of the light fading into the horizon. Kyle stood in the silence, his gaze distant. "We stopped it," the woman said softly. "It's over." He shook his head slightly. "Maybe, but that signal, it reached further than we could imagine. What if it woke something else?" The leader turned to him, a faint, tired smile crossing his face. "Then we'll be ready. Whatever comes next, humanity will face it together." But as they looked to the sky, a faint shimmer appeared beyond the clouds, a fragment of the Aegis network still glowing, pulsing faintly in rhythm. Far beyond Earth, in the void between stars, dozens of dormant structures responded with the same pulse. The system hadn't died. It had simply gone quiet, waiting. And as the last rays of sunlight broke over the horizon, a final transmission whispered through the void, barely audible, but unmistakably human in tone. "Cycle divergence confirmed. Observation continues." Cale froze, listening. The others looked at him confused. He smiled faintly, though his eyes were filled with uncertainty. "Looks like it's not over after all." Far above, the stars flickered once, like a heartbeat. Then they went still, leaving the galaxy in silence once more, as Earth began the slow, fragile task of starting anew. The days after the storm were quiet in a way Earth hadn't known for centuries. The air was still heavy with the scent of burned ozone and wet soil, but the sky had turned a calm, endless blue. Across the continents, people emerged from shelters, bunkers, and cities that had gone dark for weeks. They stepped into sunlight that felt new, as if the planet itself had taken a deep breath after holding it for too long. The systems slowly came back online, not through command centers or control codes, but through natural stabilization, like the world finding its own rhythm again. The Aegis core no longer pulsed with that blinding light. It sat deep beneath the Earth, quiet but alive, its surface glowing with a faint blue shimmer that moved like a heartbeat. Scientists and engineers who ventured near it said they could feel a hum in the air, a gentle vibration that wasn't threatening anymore. Whatever intelligence had guided it before seemed to be asleep, or perhaps simply watching. Cale stood outside the rebuilt command outpost, watching the horizon where old satellites and debris still burned in slow streaks across the sky. The woman joined him, carrying 2 cups of coffee that steamed in the cool morning air. She handed him one and smiled faintly. "It feels strange," she said. "All that noise, all that fear, and now it's just—" "Quiet," he nodded, staring at the soft curve of the Earth beyond the horizon. "Quiet isn't a bad thing. Maybe it's what we needed." She leaned on the railing beside him. "Do you think the Council will honor the truce?" Cale took a slow sip, the warmth grounding him. "They saw what the Aegis could do. They'd be fools not to." He paused, then added, "But fear makes even the wise do foolish things. I don't think they'll forget this. I just hope they understand that it wasn't a weapon. It was a warning." Across the galaxy, that warning had already taken root. Council worlds that had once dismissed humanity now whispered about Earth's defense, the living planet that had awakened and reshaped the balance of power. In far-off systems, colonies long cut off from home received fragments of the final Aegis signal and realized Earth had survived. Some began sending transmissions again, reconnecting a scattered species. Back on Earth, the leader spent long hours in the rebuilt Central Command. The once broken screens now showed maps filled with green lights, signals from old stations reactivating one after another. He traced them with his finger, smiling quietly. "We're whole again," he murmured. "Not perfect, but whole." The engineer who had helped disable the Aegis stood beside him. "It's strange, isn't it? We thought we were fighting for control, but it feels like the planet fought for us instead." He looked at her, thoughtful. "Maybe that's what the architects meant all along. Maybe humanity was never meant to command the galaxy, just to protect it." Weeks turned into months. Earth healed in small, steady ways. The massive ship that had once hovered above it now lay scattered in pieces across the oceans and deserts, its remains studied by scientists who treated it with quiet reverence. They found traces of technology no one could fully explain, machines that seemed to repair themselves, metals that hummed faintly when touched. Whatever civilization had created Aegis, its reach had been vast and far beyond human understanding. Kale and the others returned often to the underground chamber. It had become something like a sacred site, a place where people came not to worship, but to remember. The core glowed softly, its energy calm and balanced. Sometimes, when the chamber was quiet enough, it felt as though faint whispers echoed from within, fragments of the ancient voice that had once spoken through it. One day, as Kale stood there alone, a low vibration filled the room. He frowned, stepping closer. The core pulsed once, then projected a small holographic sphere of light. Within it appeared an image, not words, not a person, but a simple vision of stars spreading outward from Earth, thousands of points of light blinking into existence. He understood immediately. The Aegis wasn't just watching, it was guiding. Humanity's colonies were reconnecting faster than expected.